Okay, so for this video, I'm at a park and I'm holding my phone and recording this time, whereas in some of the other videos I've used a tripod. And it's kind of late, it's like 9 p.m. at night, and I wanted to record a video today, and there's a car in the background, but we'll ignore that. But at this park, it's pretty well lit for all of the night, which is really nice. I want to record a video right now. And I just wanted to talk about in this video what's it like to overcome narcissistic abuse syndrome. And not everyone will know what that is, and I know I've kind of posted a variety of genres and topics on my blog or my vlog, and I have sort of just done that because I wanted my YouTube channel to be a reflection of things that I am and things that I do and what my interests are. And this isn't necessarily an interest, but it's sort of a life that I've lived. And my parents are both narcissists, and I think my mom's an overt narcissist, so she's just out front about it. I think it's pretty obvious, whereas my dad is more of a covert narcissist, and it's less obvious. And with my mom, she'll pick fights about everything and anything. If I just ask her a question, like my dog right now, one of my dogs is injured. And I know my mom doesn't want to pay for the surgery, and I know my mom just wants to sort of not admit that she doesn't want to pay for the surgery. And so instead of saying, hey, I don't want to pay for the surgery, well, we got into a fight today, and we've gone into this fight numerous times since my dog has been injured for the last few weeks. And basically, instead of saying, that's really expensive, I don't want to pay for the surgery, she may not survive the surgery anyway, she'll just be angry at me, and she'll say, I take care of the dog, and she'll be yelling and things like that. But the thing that I wanted to talk about most was called narcissistic fleas. And if you are sort of in the online community and you know about narcissism or narcissistic abuse syndrome, you'll be familiar with the term narcissistic fleas. And there's like a Reddit about this too that you could look at, and I'll explain what narcissistic fleas is, but I can explain it as well. And basically, it's this idea that if you spend enough time around toxic people, that you develop toxic traits without being a toxic person yourself. And something that I know about myself is that I'm a very PC person, and by PC I mean very politically correct. Like, I don't say anything rude, and I don't say anything offensive, ever. Nothing rude, nothing offensive, very G-rated, super polite. And that's just because that's how I am internally. That's the kind of person I am internally. But I've been surrounded by people who are very rude, very toxic, very narcissistic. In terms of, if they don't get what they want, they'll call you names. Like whore, cunt, con artist, things like that. And I'm not a whore, I'm not a cunt, I'm not a con artist. None of these things are me. But they'll call me these things. And because they call me these things, I've started fighting back. And when you have people just call you names out of nowhere for no reason, my only sort of recourse in fighting back is by calling them those names too. And it bothers me because I don't want to become like them. They're sort of rude and unempathetic and selfish, and they have all of these really, really bad qualities that I don't want to adopt at all. And so this is one example of a narcissistic flea. And the thing about it is that if you spend your time around anyone, not even trying to spend your time around them, but they insert themselves into your life, you do become influenced by them and their behavior. And this is something that they do that I've been influenced by, because in responding to them calling me a whore and a cunt and a con artist, I've started calling them whores as well. And I don't like that I'm doing that. And I don't like that when I'm around toxic people. And I don't like that when I'm around narcissistic, sociopathic, psychopathic people, that it brings out the worst in me. And it brings out the worst in me because it makes me want to fight back. And because they're playing dirty and they aren't fighting based off of anything that's true or real, it makes me fight dirty. And I just end up calling them a whore back. And I hate it. And I hate that part of this. I think on the positive side of this is that I know who I am, I know who these people are, and I know what behavior of myself I love, what behavior of myself I don't love, and where those influences come from. For myself, the things I love about myself are that I'm empathetic, I'm compassionate, I'm understanding, and I'm so empathetic that I'm the kind of person where you could basically introduce me to anyone in the world and I could find a point of commonality. But with these people, They are so rude, so cold, so manipulative, so calculating. They are such awful people that you really don't want to find a point of commonality around them, because then you're going to just become more and more and more and more like them. Whereas the parts of myself that I like are the empathetic parts of myself, the compassionate parts of myself, the very, 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 very loving parts of myself. And when I'm around these sorts of people, they think it's normal. Like for them, whether you're a friend or you're a lover, they think it's normal to be rude, to be manipulative, to be very, 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 very domineering, very controlling, very demanding. They think that's okay. And they think that's normal. And that's not normal. That's very abusive. That's very, very manipulative, abusive, controlling, very, very bad behavior. Those are all red flags. And I think for myself, it's important to do this video because since I found a lot of narcissistic abuse syndrome communities on YouTube, it's helped me sort of process my own childhood and my own upbringing and a lot of people that I keep attracting. Because what I've noticed is that when you're raised by narcissistic parents, you're raised to believe that you're unlovable and that you're blamed for all of the negative traits that those narcissistic people have. Like, for example, my mom has this dog, and this dog basically picks a fight with everyone. Like, we have 4 dogs in the house on a regular basis, and this is my mom's dog. And this dog will basically growl and bite one of my other dogs without having done anything, like completely unprovoked. I remember my mom saying to me years back, she's like, "You're just like Max. You always bite people." And today I realized, years later, that my mom was actually projecting her own faults onto me because she's exactly like her dog. Whereas in contrast, I'm just like my dog. My mom's personality is like her dog, who bites unprovoked and growls unprovoked. Whereas my personality is very much like my dog, Poe, who is very intelligent, very sociable, very empathetic, is very, 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 very intuitive, gets along with everyone, really knows how to understand people and understand what people want and what people need, and very, very intelligent and very creative, both in a lot of ways. And what I've noticed about my mom is that another thing about narcissists is that they will always blame you for who they are. And they have this problem with accountability. And what I've noticed with myself is that that's made me hold on to what's called toxic shame. And I've talked about this a little bit in one of my other videos. But it's basically the idea that when narcissists blame you for who they are, what they're asking you to do is basically hold on to their karmic debt. What they're asking you to do is to hold accountability for their actions and their problems. It's like if you run someone over and they ask you to take the blame. That's basically what narcissists do. Not saying that that's actually happened to me where someone's done that in that specific situation, but like when my parents filed for bankruptcy, they asked me to take the blame for it. Things like that, where it's like, I'm not to blame, you just didn't pay your credit cards. Things like that. And the thing about narcissists is that they have an inability to take accountability for their actions. They have an inability to take accountability for their choices, for their responses, for anything in their life. And they expect everyone else to do that but them. And the reason why this is a very toxic behavior is because it's just unhealthy. You know, there are things that are like 100% my responsibility. There are things that are 100% someone else's responsibility. And there are things where you share responsibility between people. And that's a healthy way to sort of enforce good behavior and bad behavior. If you never take accountability for any of your actions, it's going to reinforce very, very poor behavior because then you're going to get someone who commits murder and won't take accountability for it. Or you're going to get someone who commits tax fraud and won't take accountability for it. Or you're going to get someone who's a very, very bad friend and they won't take accountability for it. And it reinforces very, very poor behavior. Having guilt for behaving poorly is what makes people behave well. And having shame for being ridiculed for behaving poorly or being punished for behaving poorly is what gets people to behave well. This is why narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths behave so poorly. They behave so poorly precisely because they don't take accountability for their own behavior. Because they don't take accountability for their own behavior. In situations where they should feel shame and guilt, they don't. And in situations where they should be apologetic, they aren't. Because they're saying someone else is responsible for holding the gun, so to speak. And in this video, I just wanted to talk about what it was like for me going through the experience of overcoming narcissistic abuse syndrome. And I think my biggest takeaway from overcoming narcissistic abuse syndrome was not developing narcissistic fleas or not developing those toxic behaviors myself unknowingly just because I'm surrounded by these people. And I think that has been the biggest deal for me, is I don't want to become like these people. And I think that's been the hardest thing for me, especially when you're surrounded by these types of people, when they're in your family or when they're in your workplace or when you just can't avoid them. And I had a friend recently who moved out of a very abusive situation. She lived with someone who was angry all the time, not violent, but very angry all the time, and it just makes you feel like you have to walk on eggshells. And narcissists are like that as well. Sociopaths, psychopaths are often very manipulative like that as well. Well, they'll use rage and they'll use anger as a way to force you into submission because they want you to be unrelentingly under their control. And I think the biggest lesson that I learned in trying to process not developing narcissistic fleas or not developing toxic behaviors myself is having a level of awareness and being able to say, this is not who I am, this is not who I want to be. I need to make sure that in protecting myself from narcissistic people and protecting myself from sociopathic people and protecting myself from psychopathic people, that I don't become like them to protect myself from them. And the answer is basically no contact. No contact with those types of people. And it's hard when you're surrounded by them. And this is why it's a big deal for me to move out of my parents' house as quickly as possible. Because in being able to move out of my parents' house, I'll basically be in a situation where I won't be subconsciously influenced by very negative, very poor, very toxic behavior ever again. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time.